Hello, BookTube. Sorry for the odd lighting and the odd positioning here and how odd it's going to get. This is a library tour. We're continuing with my library tour. We're almost done with my library tour, but this end part is going to be strange. There are a couple of working shelves here that are at odds and ends here, and that the angle is odd, but we're going to give it a try and see how many of these we can get through. So the first book, I'm hoping that I just don't cause things to collapse and fall here. The first book is going to seem a little strange. It's a textbook. It was written as a textbook. It was intended and marketed as a textbook, and yet it's brilliant. It's incredibly eloquent. So believe it or not, it's a textbook I'm actually advocating that you buy and read. Now, this is the paperback version of one part of the 6th edition. You can easily see it often as a hardcover. I just found it as a paperback, and I'd already given away my hardcovers to various people. This is Palmer and Colton's A History of the Modern World since 1818. And this is just a trade paperback that I got that was in terrible condition. I got it at a church sale, and I just reinforced it. And it is, I know that I'm starting off with a hard, weird sell, but it is incredible. Don't let the textbooky title fool you. It is an amazing work, incredibly powerfully written. So if you see it at a yard sale or church sale or used bookstore and you think somebody sold their textbook, you should get it and read just whatever story in that survey interests you. Start with World War I. Just read that part and see. Or just World War II or colonialism or whatever. Or the revolutions of 1848. Pick the subject in that survey that interests you the most and just read that. And you will see immediately what I'm talking about. Just a word to the wise. This was a textbook. It was marketed as a textbook. So if you see a copy at a used bookstore or a flea market or whatever, look through it first. You should be in that habit anyway, but look through it first because there's a very high likelihood that it has that obnoxious neon yellow highlighting. It's very high likelihood that a student had it. So check it out first before you get it, but by all means, don't miss it. Then a lot of the stuff on this shelf is not going to be eligible for this. A lot of this is work-related stuff, deadline stuff. Okay, here, then yet there's stuff mixed in. This is a hardcover of Elliot Magen's book Superman, The Last Son of Krypton. I didn't even know that this came as a hardcover. This is a hardcover of the book that he wrote that went in conjunction with, now see, that wobbled the camera, that went in conjunction with the movie. Only the book is not anything like the movie. The book is quite good. Not that the movie isn't, but the movie is kind of dumb and it's kind of 70s and the Salkind brothers' hands are all over it. Whereas the book is pure Elliot Magen, who was a Superman writer forever and ever. Then the next one is something we've seen before. This is a hardcover, but we saw a trade paperback. This is More Matter by John Updike. Just have the big, huge hardcover and not 100% sure why. Hey, let's leave this out and see if that makes things any easier. Next one is Stefan. Oh no, God help us see. This is what a nightmare. And you know, this is, believe it or not, this is after planning. This is Stefan Zweig's biography of Erasmus. Largely useless, and I think I keep it mainly for affection reasons. But I'm going to set it aside because I certainly shouldn't keep it in here. It should be with biographies. Then the next one was A Princely Gift from Mark at Richardson Reads. This is Essays, Articles, and Reviews by Evelyn Waugh, the author of Brideshead Revisited. He is incredible at this, at my profession. He is absolutely incredible at it. This book is 1,000 pages long, and most of the pieces collected in here are not only negative, but scathingly negative. Brilliantly so. A very good reminder of what Peter Prescott always used to say, which is that if you are a book critic and you lose your taste for going for the jugular, you really ought to get out of this line of work. Not to do it all the time, but to be always able to do it. It's just invigorating. Just invigorating. And then we have another example. This is As of This Writing by the great Clive James. It's a collection of literary pieces, much like the Evelyn Waugh. Then we have Catastrophe, Collapse. Then a UK trade paperback of The Collection by Peter Ackroyd. Again, these things are right here. The Updike, the Ackroyd, the James, and the Evelyn Waugh are all right here because there must have been a point when I was using them all, and I just took them off the books and book reviews and books about authors shelf and just didn't put them back, and that's not good. I shouldn't do that. So I'll put these here for now, and then we'll just move on. We're going to move on to the next shelf, because that one was half of that shelf that we just did. It took only 5 minutes because half of it was stuff that I can't show you. All right, so we'll move on to this next. This next is a whole shelf, but there are several box sets, so this shouldn't take long either. The first one is by the great Roz Chast. This is Going to Town. And this is all about her growing up, you know, and going into New York City and what New York City of that time was like in the 1970s. And it's full of her style of cartoon. I am a Roz Chast fan, a big fan of hers. So I'll take any book that she does. And it looks like since the success of Can't We Talk About Something Nice, her incredibly moving book about her parents, there was also a cartoon book just like this. It looks like since the unexpected success of that and the critical appraisal, the critical praise that it got in weird quarters, it moved a lot of people. I'm hoping that we see a lot more big hardcover collections like this from her. I hope we can see one every year. That would be great, or every other year. Okay, this next one is, I mention on this channel all the time, Trump books. I read all the Trump books, so you don't have to. This is one that I recommend. Occasionally there's one that I recommend. This is one of those. It's Even Worse Than You Think, by David K. Johnston, who is fantastic and has been writing about Trump even longer than I have. Knows everything there is to know about Trump, and writes it really well. Writes it without the silly attention-grabbing prose that so many Trump books are, you know, that mars so many of them. So I really do recommend it. This next one is Daniel Levitin. This is from last year, I believe. A lot of these things will have pub sheets in them. Oh no, this is from 2016, A Field Guide to Lies. Wonderful, wonderful book of his on deciphering misinformation. Who knew how important it would be? But it's only become more important with every year of the Trump administration, that we all learn how to analyze and detect good information versus intentionally fraudulent bad information. We've all had to learn how to become good at that. Oh, all right. This next one is the hardcover edition of something we've seen already, and look at that. It's crammed with reviews. I reviewed this as well. This is The Library Book by Susan Orlean. An incredible book. Just incredible. Partially about one particular library fire, but also largely also about our love, just in general, of libraries, what they are, when they started, what they mean to the communities that they're in. I don't think that my review is in here. I think my review is on the other side of the world. We have, oh yeah, there's a lot here, but not mine, I don't believe. Boy, oh, I kept every review. Great, fantastic. Oh, all right. This is a trade paperback. A book we've seen already. This is the Michael Katz translation of Crime and Punishment. Came out in a hardcover, and it had a blurb by me. Now, you've seen lots of blurbs by me on books, but never on hardcovers. Never on a hardcover dust jacket. That was a time where the publicist, the publisher, reached out to me and said, would you read an advanced copy of this book, and if you like it, can we maybe use your comments if we have the room? And I said, sure. And I read it and thought it was fantastic. And they did use my comments. We saw the hardcover. And then this was from Liverite. A year later, they brought out the paperback. And the paperback not only has my blurb on it, but it has my blurb on the cover. On the front cover. Above Dostoevsky's name. Look at that. That is one of the singular joy-inducing highlights of this weird second act in my critical career. I just had absolute joy to see that. An absolute joy. Look at that. That still amazes me. That is still just amazing. And it actually makes me, when I first got this thing in the mail, it made me a little bit sentimental in an odd way. For my father, who has been dead for a very, very long time. I think he would have been incredibly pleased to see that, to walk into a bookstore and see that. And maybe even Miss Sainted Ma would, although she wouldn't have read the book because she was saving her eyes. But she would still have been happy to see it. But I was overjoyed, and I still am. That's why I have the exorbitance of 2 copies. Oh, all right. Okay, this is vintage. We've seen in this library tour, which is coming to an end, these big vintage books. They're extra size, they're extra wide, they're floppy, they have double columns. This is Anne and Jeff Vandermeer, the Big Book of Science Fiction. Big, gigantic thing that has lots of idiosyncratic choices in here. This is a volume that science fiction fans should have, even if they disagree with what's in here, because there's a lot of thought-provoking inclusions. I originally scorned it just a little, but then I realized, I remind myself every time I get an anthology like this and I scorn what's in it, I then remind myself, no, that's the whole point. That's the whole point. If you get a brief to make a big anthology of science fiction or murder mysteries, locked door mysteries, ghost stories, and the end result that you do is predictable, everything's in there that I would expect to be in there, in other words, you're not imposing your critical vision on it at all, well, then that's a failure. Even if it irritates me, that's still a failure. So I have come to appreciate this volume much more. I hope there's another one. I hope there's a second big book of science fiction, or maybe a new big book of fantasy. That would be great. Something like that. I keep meaning to check Amazon and see if something like that is on the horizon. Oh, all right. Okay, this is a Scribner library. Scribner library for a long time. They had classics illustrated by W.C. Wyeth, and this is one of those. This is a Robert Louis Stevenson. I love Robert Louis Stevenson with a passion, and this is probably my favorite Stevenson, and it's not one of his better known books. It's The Black Arrow, which I think is just fantastic. It's so gaudy and incredibly melodramatic. But I just love it. I love it. I know it feels a little silly to be calling Robert Louis Stevenson melodramatic. He sort of built his trade on that. But this is more so. And it's historical in a more explicit and old-timey, ye olden days fashion than, Treasure Island or anything like that. So I love it, and I don't often see it. I'm very glad that I grabbed a copy as soon as I saw it at the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston. I wish that I had the Scribner Library editions of all of the rest of Robert Louis Stevenson. There's one for David Balfour. There's one for Kidnapped. There's one for Treasure Island. There might even be one, if any of you know this, is there one for Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? I almost want to say that there isn't. That Wyeth never illustrated Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But I love all those others. I don't, as you've seen from this library tour, I have barely any of these things, and I absolutely love them. I have Last Days of Pompeii, but it's not Wyeth. I have Last of the Mohicans, which is Wyeth, but I don't have the Deerslayer, which is Wyeth as well, I don't think. Or do I have the Deerslayer and not Last of the Mohicans? One way or another. I don't have, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I don't have that. That's a volume I really want, and I don't have it, and a whole bunch of others. Wyeth did a whole bunch of them. I wish I could walk into a Barnes & Noble and just get them all. But I don't think they're available. I don't think I can do that. That would be great, because I have an employee discount that's fairly deep at Barnes & Noble. I'll have to look into that and see, but I don't think so. And if I did, they'd be editions that had been printed in 2019, so they'd be crappy. The workmanship would be crappy. Let's see here. Oh, okay. This is certainly redundant. Everyman Library for a while did these very neat black and white, just austere black and white editions of all of their reprint line for classics, and I like them. I like them quite a bit. I grabbed this one, I guess, because I like that this is their Pride and Prejudice. No idea why I would have this one as opposed to all the others. For a long time, I had the black and white Everyman of Boswell's Life of Johnson, but then I thought, oh, come on. You have like 5 Boswell's Life of Johnson. You don't need another one. But I still have this Pride and Prejudice. Let's see here. Okay, all right, this is A.J. Froude. This is Short Studies on Great Subjects. Back when these things could be, when a book like this could be made in any way. So what are the subjects? The poetry of Matthew Arnold, the Book of Job, Lives of the Saints, the Dissolution of the Monasteries, the Philosophy of Christianity. I haven't read that one, I don't think, in quite some time. Spinoza. Yeah, so relatively short pieces. He was a long-winded cuss, so that that short is relative here. Oh, okay, all right. This is something that I mentioned. I mentioned this here in this library tour. This is the Silmarillion, only this is the version that I want, as opposed to any trade paperback or any mass market. This is the one, this cover illustration, the one that came out originally. And this is, those of you who are maybe not familiar or, aren't up on your Tolkien, this is his Legendarium. This is the sort of the Old Testament to his New Testament of the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. This is the great mythological history of Middle-earth in all of its eras and ages, and it's a very acquired taste for reading. The solid narrative parts, the stories, Baron and Luthien, the dragons, the giant battles, are interspersed with large amounts of cod King James Old Testament style sagas about peoples who begat peoples and travel there and go hither and thither. And if you're not expecting that, then it's I've had people be almost physically disoriented by the Silmarillion. I don't know how to remedy that, except, you know, it's beautifully done. If you read it with an open mind, I think you'll get used to it and even like it. And then we get box sets at 15 minutes. So I was right to just do the two of these together, because the box sets aren't going to take any time at all. The first one is who did this? Ballantine did this. This is the Ballantine trade paperback of The Lord of the Rings. This thing here, with the maps on the box, and I fell in love with these books first in this format. I liked them before that in the mass markets, but I fell in love with it in this format, in these books. These are not mine. These are not my original copies. I got rid of this long before I even knew to keep it, and got I think the Ballantine mass market box set that had The Hobbit in it. Of that, I think I had that forever and ever. I think that was my Lord of the Rings. And then after a while, you realize you love Lord of the Rings so much that you can stand to have multiple editions, and that maybe you should have a reason for each. And then I saw this at the Brattle Bookshop and thought, oh no, that is the version that I want. If I don't have any others, that's the version that I want. So now I have it, and it's right here next to where I sit in bed, because I often do want to consult with the Lord of the Rings. I often do want to pull it down and just read a bit. And then the next box set is a bit controversial. This is John D'Agata's The Story of the Essay, in 3 volumes. So we have, let's see here, The Next American Essay, The Making of the American Essay, and The Lost Origins of the Essay. 3 volumes of his, plus a guide at the top there, a new history of the essay. And these are controversial. He's a bit of a controversial editor, because there are a lot of people who quibble with what he includes and why he includes it to make these things so big. His inclusion of stuff in, for instance, The Next American Essay, some of those are, and The Making of the American Essay, especially the big one in the middle, have very controversial inclusion. Stuff that by controversial I mean not, you know, I like that but somebody else doesn't, but is even an essay, or it isn't an essay, or people say just, this isn't even a question, why do you have this in here? You're just calling it an essay. You could call anything an essay. I think it's fantastic. I love his inclusions. I argued with it in my mind at first, but again, it's like I said, I think one of the things that defines a great anthology is, does it bear the vision, the imprint of the person who made it, even if that imprint is going to make you argue with it. Classic case in point for you science fiction fans would be Dangerous Visions by Harlan Ellison. Hardly an inclusion in there that I agreed with completely, and yet it's an anthology of brilliance. But anyway, then we have the last thing. I don't know if I can get this out of here. Actually, let's move this one out and slide this over. This is like book Jenga. This thing is huge. It's beautiful. I go back to this a lot. This is Robert Alter, the great translator, Robert Alter, and this is his Bible. This is the Bible, the Hebrew Bible. Look at that. Just in 3 volumes, you have the 5 books of Moses, the prophets, and the writings. And I love these things, not just for the translation. I love the translations. They are vigorous. I am a child of the King James Bible. So some of the liberties that he takes with these things feel almost sacrilegious to me. And it took me a while, but I eventually came to just love that about it. I think that's just fantastic. But also the commentary. That's the main reason I go back to these volumes, especially the middle one. The Prophets is the commentary. He's just an amazingly learned person with an incredibly lucid writing style. So I go back to his commentary a lot on these things, just whenever I'm pondering something in the Old Testament, which happens often. It happens more often than you might think. And that's it. That is these next 2 shelves. So as far as I can tell, we have 1 more of these videos to do, and then we'll be done with this library tour. Except for the penguins, which have their own sort of life. I think there's odds and ends left. I think we can get the odds and ends that are left done in 1 more video. And then we'll be done with this library tour, except for the penguins. So I'll wrap this up for now, and we have that to look forward to. Thank you, BookTube.